You don't miss the ones who were kind. You miss the one who kept you guessing. The one who left you feeling like you'd almost figured something out, and then disappeared before you could. That specific ache, the one you can't quite justify to anyone, isn't weakness. It's something much stranger, and philosophy has a name for it. Think about the last time someone treated you consistently well. Someone who showed up, said what they meant, and meant what they said. You probably remember them warmly, but you don't lie awake replaying their texts. You don't find yourself searching for their face in a crowded room. Kindness, it turns out, is easy to carry. It doesn't leave a splinter in you. But the other kind, the one who was brilliant and then cold, tender and then absent, who made you feel chosen one week and invisible the next. That person lives in you differently. They didn't just pass through. They left something unresolved, and the mind cannot rest near anything unresolved. This is not a personal failing. This is almost mechanical. Psychologists call the mechanism intermittent reinforcement. It was first mapped, almost accidentally, by B.F. Skinner in the 1950s through experiments with pigeons and levers. What he found was unsettling. A reward given unpredictably, not consistently, produces the most persistent compulsive behavior. The animal doesn't stop. It becomes frantic. It keeps pulling the lever long after the reward has gone. You were pulling the lever too. Every time they came back warm after being distant, every time the difficult conversation somehow ended in closeness, your brain registered not just relief. It registered a hit of dopamine more potent than any steady relationship could produce. The uncertainty was the drug. The inconsistency was the point. And now that they're gone, you're not just grieving them, you're in withdrawal. But there's something philosophy reaches that psychology alone doesn't quite touch. Simone de Beauvoir wrote about how we come to define ourselves through the gaze of another person, and what it costs us when that gaze is unreliable. When someone looks at you like you are everything and then looks through you like you are nothing, you don't just feel confused, you feel unmade. And the work of getting yourself back is immense, quiet, and mostly invisible to everyone around you. There's another layer, and this one is harder to say. You don't only miss who they were, you miss who you were when you were trying to reach them. There is a version of you that was so alive in that relationship, alert, hungry, trying. And that version doesn't have anywhere to live now. Some of the grief is for yourself, for the intensity of your own feeling. That kind of longing is lonely because you can't really explain it to anyone without sounding like you've lost perspective. The philosopher Alain Badiou described love as a declaration, a commitment to encounter the world from two rather than one. But some relationships never quite become two. One person is always slightly out of reach, always the one being pursued, and the other is always leaning forward. When that relationship ends, the one who was leaning forward doesn't just lose a person, they lose the posture. They lose the direction they were facing. Dorothy Tennov, who coined the term limerence in 1979, spent years studying this specific kind of obsessive attachment, the kind where another person takes up involuntary residence in your mind. She found that limerence intensifies not in the presence of certainty, but in the presence of doubt. The person who occasionally seemed to return your feeling, who gave you just enough, they became impossible to dislodge precisely because the case was never closed. Your mind kept returning to the evidence, kept looking for the pattern, kept trying to solve it. And this is where it gets darker than most people expect. The person you cannot stop thinking about may not have been the most important person in your life. They may not even have been the one who knew you best, but they left the most open loops, the most unfinished sentences, the most questions you never got to ask, or asked and never had answered honestly. The mind doesn't rank people by how good they were for you. It ranks them by how unresolved they are. So you find yourself grieving someone you couldn't even fully trust when they were there. You find yourself missing the ache itself, missing the way you used to feel just before they messaged, the particular texture of waiting. That waiting had a shape. It was uncomfortable, but it was yours. And now even that is gone. An ordinary life, reliable, undramatic life, feels thin by comparison. What do you do with this? Not fix it. That word is wrong for what this is. But maybe recognize it clearly. The missing isn't proof that they were right for you. It isn't your heart telling you to go back. It's the sound of an unfinished thing, and unfinished things make noise. You don't have to answer every sound. Some silences can be allowed to be. The ache will change, not because time heals exactly and that's too clean, but because the mind eventually exhausts itself on puzzles that have no solution. Slowly, the question stops feeling urgent. The lever stops being worth pulling. You find yourself thinking of them less not because you've moved on in some tidy way, but because you've quietly, almost without noticing, accepted that the sentence was always going to end mid-thought. And somehow, that is enough to begin.